Welcome to How to Live Slow, the podcast where we discuss slow living for the modern woman and help you design an intentionally slower family life. I'm Rachelle Glendon, your personal slow living coach and host of this podcast. I know all about busy, but I love living slow. Enjoy the show. Well, hello and welcome back to episode 82 of How to Live Slow. I hope you're doing really, really well. I'm so excited about this episode. I haven't done this many solo episodes in a row since I started, but I'm really enjoying sharing these episodes about seasonal living, which is kind of like my next iteration and what I've really been playing with a lot lately with the slow living side of things. If you've been listening along for a while, you'll know that once a quarter at the end of the season, I tend to do a bit of a seasonal review and set some intentions and do some reflections and all of that sort of thing. And I've really been loving that and I've really found quite a lot of benefits from it. So today I want to share with you something that I've been working on and kind of evolving in my mind, and I'm calling it my seasonal philosophy. So like I said, I've been playing with seasonal living for probably about 12 months, and I've been recording my intentions, or I've been recording my outcomes on the podcast for the last few seasons since winter last year. And I've really been learning so much more about it. And seasonal meaning there's kind of three versions of seasons, right? So there's your natural seasons. So there's autumn, winter, summer and spring. And then you've got your inner seasons, which kind of mirror the moon. And we'll get into that a little bit in a minute. But you've got, your hormonal seasons, which kind of, they're the same as the moon, like the 28-day cycle. And you've got 4 individual weeks, which kind of represent the natural seasons, as we know. And then you've kind of got the seasons of life, right? So when you're younger and they call that maiden. When you have babies, you're in the season of life of being a mother. And as your children age and they're babies and then they're toddlers and then they become, tweens and then teenagers and then you're an empty nester, those are all little seasons of life. And the idea is that seasons and cycles, they just change and they evolve. So anyway, but what I've really learned is that seasonal living as of itself is so much more than just, flowers in spring, hot weather in summer, leaves falling off trees in autumn and knitwear in winter. Those are actually really beautiful things and I love and appreciate those. And the older I get, the more I appreciate that kind of ebb and flow. But I really have found that seasonal approach runs so much deeper. And so that's why today I'm sharing with you what I've discovered and what I've developed as my seasonal philosophy. So we live in a 24-hour world and it was essentially designed by men. The Industrial Revolution, women didn't work in those, back in the olden days when the Industrial Revolution started and shift work became a thing. That was designed by men. And it worked well for men because men live on a 24-hour hormonal cycle. And that cycle kind of mirrors the sun. So they sort of more or less experience similar energy patterns every day. Women experience a hormonal cycle, as we know, and, depending on where you're at, whether you are, before you've started your period or if you're menopausal or other situations where you may not be getting a cycle, you can kind of track to the moon, but you will notice that your energy is different and it's different every day. So it's roughly on a 28-day cycle. It may be shorter or longer, but it's got sort of 4 distinct phases mirroring the moon and the seasons of nature. So in a practical sense, that means our energy patterns are different, right? And how we feel and how we think varies from day to day. We try to squeeze ourselves into this 24-hour cycle that was developed by men, and it just really so often, it just fails. We get burnt out, we feel guilty, and we wonder why we can't keep up. Let me know if this is something that really resonates with you, but it really resonates with me because I've definitely noticed, I've been, some days I wake up and it's 4:30 in the morning and I'm raring to go. I'm full of creative energy. I'm just so chomping at the bit. Other days it's 6:30 and I can't get out of bed and I'm just feeling really flat and tired. Or there's days when I really want to connect with my family, and there are days when I need some alone time, and it's completely different every day. And it wasn't actually until I started tracking it that I noticed that there is actually a pattern to it, and it's almost predictable now. I can kind of anticipate how I'm going to be feeling a couple of days ahead. So I guess, what I sort of think here is, it's the true meaning of it's a man's world and us women are paying the price for it. So learning to live with my seasonal nature and then going further to begin respecting and honoring my inner seasons eventually has led me to be able to work with my own capacity and not against it. What I found is that my self-esteem has significantly improved because I've released myself from trying to squeeze into this 24-hour framework of I should be waking up like a fully charged phone battery every day, and it's somehow my fault if that's not the case. So yeah, like I said, so when I realized I didn't fit into this 24-hour cycle, I thought it was me that was broken, but it's actually not me that's broken. And side note, I actually don't think that the current hustle culture really serves men either. And I don't actually think that modern day men are still to blame. I think it's such an extreme thing, and we've pushed the productivity and hustle culture so far beyond what any of us are capable of. And the long hours, many of us, men included, are just missing our cues for when we need to rest, when we need to sleep, when we need to move, and when we need nourishment. And many of us are so out of touch with our bodies, or maybe we're aware of how we feel, but we push ourselves through and get even more frustrated with ourselves, treating our bodies awfully. And it's a vicious cycle that's led to widespread chronic burnout and, worse, empathy depletion. It's we just cannot have empathy for people because we're so disconnected from ourselves. We can't have empathy for the things that are going on around us, and it just feels like we've really muted with our responses to things, particularly in the last few years, right? Our nervous systems are just shot. And somehow we've convinced ourselves that it's our bodies and our body's needs that are irrelevant and we can ignore them. And it's just not going to continue to work. So I just really wanted to kind of bring a little bit more of a positive vibe because I know we're all feeling really, just like I said, depleted. And I don't want to say positive vibe polish a turd and make everything okay and ignore the bad things that are going on in the world, ignore our burnout or whatever. But it's just okay, how can we reconnect? How can we reconnect to ourselves? What benefits and what sort of things should we be looking out for? So some of the things that might change with your seasons. So I just want to kind of point out a few things because you might not be aware, or if you are aware, you might like the reminder, or you might get some ideas. But some things that might change throughout the seasons, the kind of rests that you need or that will restore you. Because remember, the word rest is short for restorative. So sometimes you need the kind of rest that's actually quite active. A rest is just a break from something. If you're sitting at your computer all day, you might need a rest from that, which means going for a walk. You might need the kind of rest that includes having some alone time or time away from people. Your different seasons will affect how much sleep you need, the kind of exercise that you would benefit from. Sometimes you need you like and enjoy and feel good about doing really hardcore, exercise. And other times you just need to do some gentle yoga and stretching to make your body feel more comfortable. The kind of food that you feel like and how hungry you feel will change and fluctuate. What kind of books or news or music and kind of entertainment that you want to consume. Sometimes you feel like you really want to dive into a really deeply political, text, or you want to read the news. And other times you're I just can't face the news anymore. I just want to listen to some nice music or watch a trashy show and just chill out. And that, that might be related to where you are in your hormonal cycle, right? How much social interaction you crave. We talked about that. Your sensory input capacity. Sometimes the kids running around through the house giggling and laughing can be the best sound in the world. And other times you're just can you please get away from me? I cannot handle any more banging and crashing. Your thoughts and feelings will definitely change. Sometimes, you'll be sad. Sometimes you'll be angry. Sometimes you'll be really happy and loving. And that's completely fine. This isn't, all of these things aren't actually meant to make you feel like you're supposed to be always the same and always standard. You're meant to be different, and that can be a superpower in a sense. Your productivity levels can definitely fluctuate. Your ability to focus on certain kinds of tasks. Now, other things that might change is your creativity levels, your dexterity levels. Sometimes you might be quite clumsy. Your analytical ability and your empathy, they can all fluctuate as well. The way you connect and how connected you feel with your kids and your partner, your friends, family, extended community, that sort of thing. How you feel about housework and caring work, and whether you're giving in a giving mode or a receiving mode, or feeling unappreciated or feeling really like you want to serve and love. all of those things can really fluctuate. And there are so many other things, but those are some of the big ones that I've found I really notice change throughout my seasons and throughout my cycles. And, if you're if it's autumn in your autumn season of your hormonal cycle, you might find that it's a really intense feeling. Whereas if you're in, say, spring, your hormonal spring, which would be pre-ovulation, but it's winter, you may not feel as productive as what you would do in a spring, if that makes sense. It's quite fun, actually, to sort of see how things really change and flow. So, what are some entry points into becoming more seasonally aware? So, like I said, you can track your hormonal cycle if you have one, which is a really cool way of doing it. If you don't have a hormonal cycle, you can track to the moon, like the full moon being ovulation and the dark moon or the black moon or whatever it's called being your menstrual kind of time. You can just track your sleep cycle and just notice your energy fluctuations and just take a note of, and start to see if there are any patterns. You can test out not waking up with an alarm, which would require you to go to bed probably a bit earlier than what you're used to, and kind of setting the intention. Obviously if you've got to get up for work or whatever, that might not always be possible, but you can do it with practice. Also, a good way of kind of like recalibrating yourself is to spend time outside when the sun rises and sets to kind of reset your circadian rhythm, but also just to be outdoors and getting that natural light that hits you to wake you up and hits you to set you off, set off that hormonal thing that happens, your circadian rhythm. That's your circadian rhythm. Now, the other things you can do is changing your exercise type and intensity based on where you are in that cycle or how you're feeling. It's just really asking yourself, how do I feel and what do I actually feel like? Am I, avoiding a workout, as they say, or do you just actually not feel like it? And do you just need to do some simple stretching or some yoga or even a meditation or a light walk or something like that? Or skip it, nothing wrong with skipping exercise if that's what you feel like, because this is all about learning to listen to your body. And then my favorite, or two of my favorites, are letting go of restrictive eating and not making yourself feel wrong if you're extra hungry on the days leading up to your period, because that's actually biologically normal. But also not making yourself feel guilty or wrong for having, enjoying food, because that's the best part about life. It's one of the best parts of life, I should say. Yeah. So, and then finally, planning your weeks around your cycle. Now, this takes a bit of practice. It takes a bit of pre-thought. This will be part of my upcoming seasonal membership, which will be probably coming out sometime in autumn to kick off at the start of winter. But yeah, planning your weeks around sitting down on a Sunday and looking ahead. Where are you in your cycle, or where are you? What's your energy likely to be for the coming week? How social are you going to be feeling? How productive will you be feeling? And actually change things and reassess your plan based around that as much as you possibly can. It's quite a fun and illuminating thing to do. It's one of my favorite ways of kind of attuning to all of this. Okay, so the most important ingredient though for starting seasonal living is self-compassion as you decondition from this capitalist push to hustle. You might find you experience a deep tiredness that nothing seems to solve when you first do this. Or maybe you're finding that you are in that burnt out mode where you already are experiencing a deep tiredness that nothing solves. You might find your true capacity is much lower than you wish for it to be. And that can actually leave you feeling quite frustrated, which is where you need to have that self-compassion. You might find that you get really angry that you didn't see the damage that you had caused by the way you were treating yourself for so many years. You might look to find someone to blame. And yes, it's not your fault, but it is well within your power to do something to shift things. So like I said, you need to rest in that self-compassion and honor your natural energy, motivation, and capacity, and they will return. You'll be able to harness the power of the seasons, and it will be magic. Because there will be times when you'll be as productive as hell, like you will be able to get up and go all day, and you'll feel so good. And I really recommend that you honor that, and honor it by knowing that it won't last all month. It won't always be that way. So don't set your goals and your deadlines based on your most productive day. When you go to the gym and you have a really good workout, for example, and you think all I need to do is be able to show up with this much intensity every day and I'm going to be nailing it. I'm going to be so fit in a couple of months if I can just do this. And the very next day you get there and you just don't have the energy that you did the day before. And somehow it's like you make yourself wrong for that, or you tell yourself off for not having the motivation, or how come all of that's gone? Well, that's why. Yeah. So don't set your goals or with deadlines based on your most productive days. It's not my best piece of advice, but it's one of my favorite bits of this thing. Because when the pull to rest arrives, and it will, you will need space to deeply rest so that you can get back to that productive time when it rolls around again. Because rest restores, and when you rest well, when you need it, you'll have more capacity when the productive urge arrives again. Like I said, it is really, truly magic. So we need a framework for living our lives, something that gives us context, structure, and a moral code. And my sort of side note here is that that's what religion gives people who are religious or spiritual. And that's maybe what's missing for a lot of us who don't identify as being part of the organized religion community. So slow living could be, not saying that it's a replacement for a religion, but it could be that framework for living your life that gives you that context and structure and that moral code. Yeah, and what better way to have a framework than one that's based at its core with a methodology that allows you to have self-compassion and nurturance. One that allows you to parent gently and find internal motivation and fulfillment, connection to nature and to each other, and not to be hurried by the external pressures of modern life, as much as possible anyway. A framework that allows us to consume less and be more present, because we have to ask ourselves that if we are feeling like our attention is scattered and we can't figure out what is important to us, who or what system is benefiting from us being this way, and who or what system is being negatively impacted by us being this way. So a slow, simple life is one that might not look all that flashy from the outside, but from the inside, you'll feel like you finally found a place to call home. So if this sort of thing just sounds like it is totally for you and this is where you want to be, come and join me for my free autumn retreats happening next Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. Australian Brisbane time. You can register on my website. I'll leave a link in the show notes for this episode. Just hop over onto my Instagram or, find it on my website. It's howtoliveslow.com/autumn/retreat. Just pop your name and email address in there and I will get you on the list for that. I'm really excited for it. It's going to be about 90 minutes long. There'll be time for Q&A. We're going to really look into more about what that autumn is, what autumn is really about. We'll do some reflecting on how summer went, and we'll set some intentions for autumn. And in case you didn't know, autumn is a really good time you might be feeling like a little bit like, what isn't working in my life? What do I need to change? What do I feel like is really ready to be let go of? What do I need to shift? And where am I feeling frustrated or agitated that things aren't quite going as I'd hoped, particularly the start of this year? We all had deep hopes for 2022 and it's not working out. And maybe that's kind of, in a lot of ways, it's not working out as we had planned or thought it might. And that might be leaving you feeling a bit frustrated or a bit like adrift. So come along to the retreat and hopefully that can help you find some peace and find some more restorative, support. I would love to have you there. Come along and, like I said, just register at my website. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you did enjoy this episode, and thank you so much for listening. I'll see you again in the next episode. Okay, bye. That's it for another episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to connect further, the show notes from today's episode, including all the social links and free resources, are over on my website, howtoliveslow.com/podcast. Have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll speak with you again soon.